Welcome to another episode of Relational Leadership and Conscious Cultures. I am your host, Candy Barone, and we are going to talk about another way the current playbook is not serving us. And we are going to lean into a topic around a mentality and approach today that has kept us in an old, archaic way of leading because fundamentally, the world we are living in, the playbook is changing. I want to ground us in the fact that relationships are the new currency. And if you are not investing in them, you are going broke. And what that means is you can't profess you have a people first culture and then do things the old way based on the old playbook in the old leadership model. That is not working. And so I want to ground us in the fact that leadership is ultimately a choice. It is a function of how we choose to show up, how we choose to serve others, and how we choose to take personal responsibility inside those two spaces. And leadership happens in the everyday micro moments and little decisions that either strengthen and build trust in our organization, or they erode and fracture it. And so today, the topic I want to lean into is why the win-win mentality and equation is not actually a win for you and your organization. And so I know, I grew up 20 years in corporate in various leadership positions, moving throughout my career in different capacities. And even as a consultant and coach over the last 13 years, working back in some of those same environments, I see the same pattern showing up and the same conversation happening. And one of them is, oh, we need to look for the win-win. And everybody gets rallied around this notion around it needs to be a win-win solution. Now, while the intention of that is really good, I want to break down why that actually doesn't work in the way that you think it does and what fundamentally is missing from that equation, which makes that equation actually do the reverse of what you were hoping it will do. So, for example, the win-win equation says, hey, what's in it for me? What's in it for you? Let's find a way to come together so that we both, quote, win. I want you to realize how flat and two-dimensional that is. That is significantly nearsighted. It is about the instant return and instant gratification in that moment, and it is only taking in consideration the two people that are in conversation, or the two parties, or the two departments, or the two functions where that decision ultimately resides. The problem is we're missing a fundamental piece. That piece being what happens when that decision is actually made. Meaning, what is the snowball effect? What is the ripple effect? What is the outcome and the impact of that outcome? In my last episode, you may remember, I told a story about derailing an agenda, which I was known for, the queen of derailing agendas. Again, something I take with great pride. But I talked about how I had challenged when we were talking about rolling out a new technology to the field, to the sales force, when everybody was excited and there was a lot of momentum. And I asked a simple question, simply what was going to happen to the back office team, which in all honesty was already hemorrhaging. They were short resources. Things were dysfunctional. There was a lot going on that they already didn't have capacity for. And now we were talking about bringing something brand new that was a complete technology overhaul. And I remember, and if you remember me talking about this in the last episode, the immediate response was, well, that's not our problem. Which, of course, me being me, and this is where I derailed the agenda, I challenged that. I said, you do realize it is our problem, because I get we're looking at, oh, this affects the sales and marketing team and how we're going to roll this out and what's going to happen. But if we give in consideration to what that's going to feel like and the pressure that's going to put on a team that's already hemorrhaging when that comes downhill. And again, one of my favorite metaphors is the snowball effect, right? We think oftentimes that snowball, when we roll it down a hill, oh, it's just a snowball, it's going down the hill. What we forget is it creates its own kind of momentum and it starts to build as it descends and it picks up, branches and dirt and small kids and dogs and cars and houses. And it ends up being this huge snowball that turns into an avalanche that then becomes something that can't be managed. And so I want you to think when we talk about a win-win equation, when we talk about what's in it for me and what's in it for you, we are missing a key component to the equation. We are missing how it's going to affect all of those that are going to be impacted by said decision. Meaning, if you and I say the sales team and the marketing team comes together and they're making a decision about a rollout, has there been the consideration around who else in the organization is going to be impacted by default when this decision is made? This is where leadership changes. This is where, when you realize relationship is the new currency, when you realize that relationships are the fundamental foundational pillars for what you are trying to build, you start to lead differently. You stop being so far nearsighted and stop looking at it just in terms of a metric or the bottom line. And you start looking at a long-term vision and a long-term play that says, are we being conscientious, responsible, and accountable for how this might play out, how this might ripple, how this might create waves through our organization, through our teams, through our culture? Because when you don't bring that into consideration, you are being irresponsible. And I'm just going to say it straight. You are being irresponsible as a leader when you stay short-sighted, when you are only looking at the immediate gain, and when you stay in that framework of a win-win mentality. Effectively, you're not actually leading. You are doing something that is a win for you and a win for someone else, and it is not in the best interest, oftentimes, of the collective all. We are shifting into an energy that is changing not only leadership, but it's changing our business models. It's changing the way that we interact and engage together. And again, it brings us back to the core of why relationships are so important. I cannot stress enough around, if you are not investing in the right way in your relationships and understanding that as you are building whatever it is you are building, if that is not the foundation and that foundation is not strong, it is not sturdy, and it is not sustainable, you are not building what you think you are building. And at some point, you are going to find that you are building on sand and you're going to go broke. Because the reality is, it is one of the fastest ways to erode and fracture trust in your organization. Because when it's all about the win-win, you also bring back, and if you remember last time I talked about the CYA mentality, all of these things start to compound. These are the micro cracks that start to become that avalanche. They also become the cultural cancer within your organization that then becomes a tumor that is out of control. And so as a leader, fundamentally, I'm going to keep saying that, fundamentally, you need to have a broader perspective and look at the peripherals around when we are making these key decisions for the organizations. Are we still stuck in that two-dimensional, flat, not effective, not fully conscientious mentality of win-win? Or, and here's where we flip the script, or are you expanding that equation to be a win-win-win? And here's why that other win matters. Because when you go from a win-win, which is what's in it for me and what's in it for you, and you expand that assessment to include, to recognize, and to value what's in it for all those that will be impacted by this decision, you now have elevated your leadership position. You now are planting seeds and building the trust to build a more conscious culture. Win, win, win says me, we, us. And I want you to understand this is missing. The us, oftentimes the we is missing too, but the us and the we oftentimes is very isolated to just you and me. I'm talking the we being the team, the us being the collective culture. The us being how it affects your clients. The us being how you're showing up and delivering impact in your community and coming from a place of service. It is the me. What's in it for me? Where is this valuable for what I am moving forward and the vision of what we're expanding and growing and the momentum? How does this then create a win for you and the collective we or the group we of the team? And then how are we taking into consideration that collective us that then becomes the impact through the entire organization? There is never, and it's the butterfly effect. You can read one of my favorite books is Andy Andrews, The Butterfly Effect. Every decision we make creates a ripple. No decision is ever made in isolation. I want you to realize that even when you think it's a win-win conversation, and it's really just between you and me, it is never between you and me. It's never between two parents. It's never between two leaders. It's never between two partners, two friends, two siblings, to anybody. The decisions we make, every choice we make has a outcome, consequence, and ripple effect. Consequence not being bad or good, just being an outcome, just being something is going to shift. Every decision requires a leadership stance that says, am I consciously owning and showing up in a way that says, I'm choosing how I show up, I'm choosing how I serve, and I'm taking personal responsibility for my role inside those spaces. Because if you are not legitimately employing the win, win, win mentality and bringing in that additional piece around us, you are missing the boat when it comes to leading, and you are not building a conscious culture. You are creating the micro cracks and the micro tumors, which then become the cultural cancer in your organization. And I know that I'm being a little harsh on that, and that's the reality. Over 30 years of being in organizations, whether I was at the seat as an employee, as a leader in those organizations, or going in as a coach, consultant, and trainer, I'm going to tell you that this has not changed. So many people, and I get there is a belief that win-win is the right mentality. It's what's been pounded into us. It's what's been conditioned. And I'm here to say that you need to realize there is a fundamental piece missing in that equation. We have got to start looking at the three-legged stool, that if one of those legs is missing, that stool is not stable. And the stool is the me, we, and us. It is the win, win, win. And so I am going to encourage you to look at how you are making decisions within your organization. Are you truly coming from a place that says it's a win-win-win equation? Are you looking at it in terms of a long-term, far-sighted, impact-driven way that you're making decisions in your organization versus reacting to a pressure around your OP bottom line or something you think you see your competitor doing? Cannot tell you how many times decisions are made because someone reacts based on what they think their competition is doing, and they will overturn their entire organization on a dime because they're reacting to that. I mean, how many of you, if you're sitting in a business, how many of you have restructures every 6 months? That is an example of you reacting to said market and said competition. It's a also indication you are creating those win-win mentalities that is very short term, that is very much about instant gratification, and you're not playing the long game. It also means that you're not realizing that people are your number one biggest asset, and you are not investing or making decisions to strengthen said asset, and ultimately in some way you will go broke. It will cost you your top talent. It will cost you the culture that you brag about and say that you stand for. It will cost you the values you say that are important to you. It will cost you engagement. It will cost you clients. It will cost you efficiency. It will cost you, and the list goes on. I want you to explore. I invite you to look at where you are making decisions based on that very limited, very two-dimensional, very flat framework of a win-win mentality, and how different it might be when you start to employ and engage in a win-win-win mentality. This is how we build conscious cultures. With that, I hope these episodes are valuable for you. If they are, please subscribe, share your review, and as always, remember, lead courageously, lead compassionately, and lead consciously. With that, this is Candy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Relational Leadership and Conscious Cultures.